believe it was, had a story back in 2014 suggesting that Barack Obama should get rid of John Brennan's security clearance. And there is also this story. The flashback media didn't care when Obama scrubbed security clearances. And it was all about when people left the security services, they lost their clearance. They lost their security clearance. And it was standard operating procedure, and nobody cared about it. It was as everybody understood it. And now Brennan is threatening to sue Trump over this. And I'm not kidding. The Washington Post did have a story, and I think it's 4 years ago, that Obama should withdraw or cancel Brennan's security. Because what people have forgotten, the drive-bys were livid at Brennan many times during the Obama administration for basically acts of incompetence, not so much disloyalty, but acts of incompetence. But now everybody in the swamp has, of course, circled the wagons, and all of that has been forgotten. Now, it's interesting that Brennan is threatening to sue over the loss of his security clearance. And when you threaten to sue over something, that means that you have had something of value, usually financial value, taken away from you, and that you want to be compensated for it or otherwise made whole. And, of course, Trump is tweeting it. This would be fabulous. Let's go ahead and file suit. I hope he does, because that's discovery. That means we get to go into all kinds of John Brennan areas. He said, I hope Brennan, the worst CIA director in our country's history, brings a lawsuit. It'll then be very easy to get all of his records, his texts, his emails, and documents to show not only the poor job he did, but how he was involved with the Mueller rigged witch hunt. And then Trump goes on to predict that he will not sue. Now, I think, did you see, Mr. Sturdley, where Clapper said, oh, wait a minute, you need to dial it back. Clapper turned on Brennan. This is why. The minute Brennan started talking about suing, that's a gigantic red flag, because that's going to open them all up. Do you know what these security clearances are? Resume enhancements. It is how people like Brennan get hired as consultants. It's how they get hired on boards of directors. It is how they get hired as TV analysts, experts, and commentators. I have come to learn that a security clearance is resume gold inside the Beltway. It's one of, the club is the club, but there are ways that members set themselves apart from each other. I mean, in every club, there's a top tier, a middle tier, a lower tier, and then I wish they weren't in the club tier. Even the D.C. swamp has all of those tiers. And having a security clearance is one of the things that gets you in the top tier. And you can run around and brag about it. And you can drop the fact, I was a security clearance, called into court. Oh, you have a security clearance? Well, of course I do. Don't you? Well, no. How do you get one? Well, they cost $20,000, which they really do. And you have to be able to pass all kinds of scrutiny. And these guys do not want to lose these. These are like medals or gold stars. And so Brennan is giving away the game here, running around threatening to sue Trump over there's no free speech being infringed upon here in any way, shape, manner, or form. Brennan's been amplified, in fact. Brennan's out there saying more than he was ever able to say, with more drive-by media outlets interested in what Brennan has to say. But I think it's interesting. Clapper turns on Brennan. John shoots from the hip, Clapper said. Sometimes, he just starts saying things, and it's time to close the windows and run for cover. And it's all because Clapper saw Brennan threatening to sue. Because when you do that, that opens everything up. Here's Trump with a tweet about, what was it, just an hour or so 2.5 hours later, he said, everybody wants to keep their security clearance. It's worth great prestige and big dollars, board seats. And this is why certain people are coming forward to protect Brennan. It certainly isn't because of the good job he did. He's a political hack. So it's true that everybody in the Washington establishment wants one of these. And then when they leave whatever government position they have, they want to hold on to it. As I say, it's how they set themselves apart from other members of the Swamp Club. But they're $20,000 a pop. Somebody is making money on these things in addition to whoever passes them out. They take a long time to get if they're done right. And, nobody talks about it, but security clearances have only become a big deal now when Trump has canceled Brennan's. And he's threatening to cancel the security clearances of others. And it can mean financial harm. It can mean a potential loss of money. I know many of you are thinking, but Rush, leftists don't care about money. They're into the cause. Oh, folks, do not believe that. That's been one of the biggest liberal tricks that they have succeeded in fooling everybody with for decades, that they don't care about the money, that they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing it for the cause. They care about the money. They care about grant money. They care about nonprofit money. They care about finding ways to get money outside the traditional way most people do it, i.e. working. They want fundraising money. They want donor money. They want money you get from being on a board of directors here or there. But if you have one of these things, like I say, you get a TV gig, you can get contracting gigs, consulting gigs, and some jobs have gotten to the point now that they require you to have. For example, Henry Kissinger. I'm not lumping him with Brennan. Don't anybody misunderstand. When Kissinger left government, when he left the Nixon administration, he set up a firm called Kissinger and Associates. And basically, when it began, if you wanted to hire Kissinger, whoever you were, a corporation, a wealthy individual, $1 million minimum. And Kissinger had a couple of associates on board that helped him with all this. Lawrence Eagleberger was one of them. And eventually it's a pretty big firm. But the minimum buy-in was the fee. If you want the advice of Kissinger Associates, you had to give $1 million. And this is way back when it was founded. And a lot of corporations signed on because Dr. Kissinger was thought to be among the top echelon foreign policy experts. If you were a CEO of a multinational and you needed to know how long it was going to be before South Africa started taking back the farms of white-owned farmers, which, by the way, has started. You see about that? South Africa has nationalized the first 2 white-owned farms, and it's just the beginning. They're just like happened in Zimbabwe, the former Rhodesia, under the dictatorial rule of Robert Mugabe. Well, they think it's just making amends for all these past transgressions, that the farms should never have been white-owned. The Afrikaners are a minority, and they should never have the power. So now they're just going to take these farms. These first 2 farms, the owners were offered 10% of the value. And the owners of the farms told the African National Congress where to put it. The African National Congress, okay, we're going to put it there, but then we're going to take your farm, and we're going to put your farm there. And they've done it. They've taken the first. Anyway, if it's 6 months and you wanted Henry Kissinger to tell you when that was going to happen, it cost you $1 million. And everybody working at Kissinger's firm, of course, had a security clearance. What it means is you have access to inside foreign policy and intelligence information. So if you're John Brennan, you're the director of the CIA, you continue to get all that stuff even after you leave office. And anybody who has one, that's the way they, and they are, as I say, folks, they are huge, huge status things, status attachments. And it's a real embarrassment to lose one. It is. What Trump did in taking away Brennan's security clearance, there may be nothing more effectively harmful to John Brennan than Trump doing that. And now Brennan's associates are worried that Brennan's going to blow it for everybody if he follows through in this suit, which I don't think he will do, because it would open up discovery, emails, all kinds of things that Brennan doesn't want anybody to know about. Here's a story. Clapper said yesterday he thinks that John Brennan's rhetoric is becoming an issue in and of itself. Clapper was on State of the Union on CNN, which pays him. That's why he was there. Clapper has security clearance. CNN thought that was of value. So, by the way, Clapper's the guy who engineered the leak of the news that James Comey had told Trump about the golden showers aspect of the Trump dossier. And he leaked it to CNN, which ran the story. They got a big journalism award. They hired Clapper. It's an incestuous circle. And Clapper said, yeah, John's subtle like a freight train, and he's going to say what's on his mind. Translation, we all hate that Trump was elected despite our best efforts, and we all want to bring him down, but you have to disguise your hate and your agenda a little bit more subtly than Brennan is, for now. The other big news over the weekend was, or is, that one of the early members of Trump's White House legal team, Don McGahn, has spoken for 30 hours to the special counsel. 30 hours. And ostensibly the White House doesn't know what McGahn said. And, of course, what is going on here? It's a big, long New York Times story, and what they're trying to do is get Trump on obstruction. The point of the story is they want us to believe that Trump was trying to fire Mueller, but that McGahn was heroically stepping in at each moment Trump wanted to do this and stopping him from doing it. And they're trying to then say that Trump wanting to fire Mueller is the same thing as Trump firing Mueller. And that then equals obstruction. The problem is Trump has not fired Mueller. Trump has not obstructed. And he probably couldn't be guilty of obstructing anyway, because he would be doing nothing more than carrying out presidential prerogatives. But the point of that story in the New York Times, when you strip it all away, they want you to believe that Trump wanted to fire, was trying. There is no trying. You run the executive branch, you're president. How do you try? How do you try to fire Mueller? Can somebody explain this to me? How do I try to do show prep every day? I don't try, I do it. It's not like I come in here, yeah, I was trying to do show prep, but the phone kept ringing. Yeah, I was trying to do show prep, but Snerdley came in and heroically prevented me from doing it. What is this? You either do it or you don't. There's no presidential trying to fire anybody. But the New York Times is desperate to try to use McGahn to suggest that Trump wanted to fire Mueller, even though he hasn't. And they're creating as best they can in the minds of people that Trump has obstructed or wanted to, which means he could be found guilty of it. I think there's much more than that going on with this. Why would McGahn talk for 30 hours to the special counsel? You have heard me say many times in this program that I have been very puzzled by some of the early staffing choices the president made. And I think, without naming a whole lot of names, I think Trump made the mistake of choosing people from inside the Beltway, thinking that might be a way of taming all the opposition to him there. And it was a mistake because there is no taming it. And by hiring people from the swamp, by hiring people who not necessarily hate or oppose Trump, that's not what I'm saying. But if you're in the swamp If you live and work in the establishment, that's where your loyalties are ultimately going to be, because Trump is going to come and go. In whatever period of time, Trump is going to come and go. And after Trump is gone, you don't want to go with him. You need to hold on to your status and your position in the swamp. And McGahn is a swamp rat. That's where he's grown up. That's where his career is. And so Trump his original lawyers were not warriors. We're not warrior lawyers. His original lawyers may, in fact, have been like the early days of the GOP House leadership, thought Trump did collude with Russia and thought that Trump wasn't going to survive. And so the objective here was to limit the damage. But they weren't aggressive. They weren't pushing back. They were not relying on the Constitution executive power to assert privilege and prominence for the president, Donald Trump, in all things in the executive branch. And they were playing defense. And when Mueller is appointed, then everybody even got more frightened. Oh, my God, we don't want to upset we don't want to do anything that could be looked like obstruction or collusion. So everything was defensive. Now they've got some different people in there now, and it's not the way it was. But Trump didn't get a warrior attorney general either. Some of the early staffing decisions may be coming back to bite him in a small way. Anyway, there's a lot more on this. I'm just setting a table with it right now. First, obscene profits break of the day.
Limbaugh pointing the way on the EIB network.
Our friends at Hillsdale College have something to say about the way Congress works. They have created a groundbreaking new online course entitled Congress, How It Used to Work and Why It Doesn't. And that title right there sums up why you will want to take this online course. Hillsdale College teaches the Constitution and how the government's set up to work. And within this course, you're going to learn exactly what Congress should be doing and what it shouldn't be doing, and how it got to the sorry state it's in today. The course also outlines how those in our nation's capital can start to restore a more constitutional Congress. Now, this course, online course, is free to you, and when you pre-register, you'll get your place for when it launches on Constitution Day, September 17th. Hillsdale College has created an entirely new online course experience, and they make it available free, folks. Just go to rushforhillsdale.com to sign up. It's that simple. Rushforhillsdale.com and start learning. It doesn't cost anything here.
Coming up Monday morning from 5 to 9, it's the KSFO Morning Show on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
Hi, welcome back. Now, the New York Times story about Don McGahn speaking for 30 hours. There's a lot going on here. The New York Times is trying to make you think that Trump has a Judas on the team who went in and spilled the beans on Trump obstruction. And that is not what happened. Trump waived executive privilege. Well, his legal team did. The legal team, John Dowd and the other guys, they waived privilege so that McGahn could go talk. And wait, McGahn was not happy about this. McGahn didn't want to go talk. He was not happy they waived privilege. But why did they waive privilege? Why did they waive privilege? They waived privilege. This is back in the day where everybody on a team thought that it would be very helpful if they showed that they were willing to cooperate with Mueller. Folks, I cannot express to you, and I've got to dial this back because I'm gonna blow up with this. All of this is a fraud. Every aspect of this is the premise behind it, the narrative behind it. There is nothing real about this investigation except that it's happening. And what is happening is a gigantic cover-up to prevent the discovery of what actions the real collusion and criminality was, and that was with the Hillary, the DNC side of this. So acting afraid of Mueller and wanting to demonstrate that we're willing to cooperate, that's why McGahn talked with them for 30 hours. He didn't seek them out. He wasn't acting as a traitor. I'll explain this as we go on.
Coming up Monday morning from 5 to 9, it's the KSFO Morning Show on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
You're listening to the best of Rush Limbaugh on the EIB network.
Now, here's what John Dowd, who's one of the early lawyers for Trump on this Mueller thing, here's what he said about Don McGahn. And this is in the Washington Times, but it's been in a lot of places. Mr. Trump's decision to decline to assert executive privilege and attorney-client privilege has come into question, meaning why did they let McGahn go down there and talk to Mueller for 30 minutes? Why not say lawyer-client? No. Mr. Dowd said it was smarter to waive the privileges and be transparent so as to get the case over with. We made available, this is them talking, made available 37 witnesses. They provided 1 million documents, said Mr. Dowd. In terms of McGahn, he's right at the heart of the case, and they had a lot to cover with him and a lot of notes. It was all routine, very normal. The anonymous sources that criticize us for our strategy don't realize the alternative was a nightmare, just a war. Okay, so you see, the thinking is that if we're transparent, that we got nothing to hide. This is the thinking. We didn't do anything. There was no collision and obstruction. We didn't do anything. And so, yeah, here's 1 million documents. Here's 37 people you can talk to. One of them, Don McGahn. They thought they were speeding the process along. They thought that they were moving it along so that they could end it. To oppose this was to invite a war. They have a war. This is what is so frustrating. They're in a war. They have been in a war since Donald Trump got the Republican nomination. They have been in a war since Donald Trump won the presidency. They were in a war during the Trump transition, and the war intensified after Trump's inauguration. And the war is ongoing, and it isn't going to end until they get Trump impeached. That is, that whether they get a conviction in the Senate or not doesn't matter. The objective here is, and from the beginning has been, impeachment. Now, the best case scenario, they were hoping to drive Trump's approval numbers down with all these allegations. They were hoping to separate you from Trump. You know this drill. They wanted Trump supporters to abandon him. If they could do that, then they could force Trump to resign. And they thought they were going to be able to do that 6 to 9 months. They've bombed out. Now they're going to impeach. That's why winning the House is crucial. And part of it, folks, part of it is to get even for having impeached Clinton. That's part of this. The other part of it, and as big, if not larger, is the pure, undiluted, raw hatred they have for Trump. But to me, it is indicative of a total misunderstanding of who and what they were up against. And it's understandable in the sense that all these lawyers know each other. They all have orifices in the swamp, in the establishment, and they all extend to each other certain courtesies and realities and accommodations, such as, we know you're professional, we know you're high-ranking, we know you're smart, blah, 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 this mutual respect business. And Trump himself, I'm sure, thought that he was buying a little piece by hiring some of these people who were thus friendly with Mueller and his investigative team and so forth, not realizing what was going on here. So now that Mueller hasn't found it, this is the next key. Now that Mueller hasn't found anything on collusion or obstruction, it is time to make people think that he has, in preparation for his report. Now, I am given to understand that everybody involved in this, on the Trump side, the lawyers and the spokespeople, communication shop, everybody is expecting a blistering report from Mueller, because that's all Mueller is going to be able to do. There isn't any collusion. And by the way, some of you have asked me, Rush, I keep hearing all these people say, the Manafort trial and the Cohen stuff and the Russian indictments all prove that Mueller doesn't have anything. But what's the likelihood that Mueller does and is waiting till October to indict Trump or some such thing? I don't think so, folks. And I'll tell you why. You know, McGahn spoke to Mueller a long time ago. We're just now hearing about it. They want you to think it happened over the weekend, but it didn't. It was a while ago. And nothing has come of it. There haven't been any leaks from what McGahn said. And by the way, I don't want anybody to think that I think McGahn flipped. That's not at all what I think here. There are people trying to make you think that, but they're not succeeding with me. That's not what I think went on here. I think fear was driving everybody on the Trump team. And I always have. Just like Republicans have been afraid of the media for all these years. Afraid of what the media will say about them. I think some people, even on the Trump legal team, have been afraid of reputation damage, of angering Mueller and other people with whom they're going to have to continue to work long after Trump is gone. I know that's how many of them think, but I don't believe McGahn flipped. And the evidence for it is this. Since the time McGahn spoke to Mueller, and it's not recent, we've had 2 indictments against Russians that do not contain a hint of a suggestion that the Trump campaign had anything to do with collusion with Russia. The Manafort indictments have nothing to do with Trump, period, or the Trump campaign. So what it tells me is that this is all about obstruction. And they're trying to say, in this McGahn story in the New York Times, that Trump was trying to fire. It's all about firing Mueller. They have tried to bait Trump into firing Mueller. Mueller has tried to bait Trump into firing him. I think a number of people on the anti-Trump side have been baiting Trump and hoping that they would make him mad enough or tick him off enough to make him fire Mueller and maybe even Rosenstein. And that way they could say, obstruction, he's firing the guy, investigate him. And they would make the case for the American people that Trump's scared, got something to hide, is obstructing, and except it hasn't happened. So the McGahn story in the New York Times is all about how, well, Trump was trying to, there is no trying to fire. And you either do it or you don't. But the spin is that Trump really, really wanted to, and McGahn heroically interceded every time and talked sense into Trump and made sure that he didn't do it. But the timeline for a lot of this would suggest that Mueller does not have a case because Trump's actions so far have been lawful and within his constitutional prerogatives, and that's what McGahn told Mueller. McGahn told Mueller that he'd not seen any obstruction, that he'd not seen any law breaking. That's what what McGahn's ticked off about is that they let him go down there and talk, that they waived privilege for it. I say ticked. What he was. Special counsel's requested to talk to all these people. Normally, the special counsel, any lawyer's told to go pound sand. Executive client privilege, or executive privilege, lawyer client privilege. What do you mean, talk to one of my lawyers? You can't. They let him go. And it was, again, early on where they're trying to show they got nothing to hide. They're trying to show they're cooperative. It's the equivalent of I can show I can cross the aisle and work with Democrats to make Washington work and to get things. The same kind of thinking. Because they were afraid if they said no, that they would be starting a war with Mueller, and then when Mueller really gets mad, we don't want any part of that. What do you mean when Mueller really gets mad? None of this is legitimate. None of it is. Not one aspect of this investigation is legitimate. None of it ought to be happening. I have to take a break, but we've been through this. Anyway, that's pretty much the McGahn story. There's a couple other things I could add to it. But, man, do we know what we're talking about here or not? You heard of Al Sharpton, blue, the spelling of respect. during his tribute to Aretha. Not only did he do it, we knew he was going to do it, and we will show you evidence to get that.
You're listening to Rush Limbaugh,
America's gift to broadcasting
on the EIB network.
Welcome back. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh, cutting edge and all that. And having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. The Reverend Sharpton on MSNBC. Oh, man, do we have... I've been forced to lift the ban on audio sound bites from MSNBC for something that was said on Friday night. And it was basically Donald Trump, a New York Times reporterette, Michelle Goldberg, on MSNBC, actually said that Donald Trump wants to round people up and murder them. And there was no pushback on that from conservatives on the panel. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you, if I had ever said something like that about Barack Obama, that might have been the end of this program. It might have been, if people thought that I meant it, and if I had said something like that. But here is a New York Times info babe all over MSNBC saying it. And some, what, Rush, come on, she's just trying to fire up the base. You think so? Of course they're trying to fire up the base. You don't think she really believes it? Why would she be saying this stuff? But for there to be no pushback against that Trump wants to round people up and murder them. So that's coming up. But before we get there, Sunday morning on MSNBC's Politics Nation, the Reverend Al Sharpton, who's hosting this program, had a little bit to say about Donald Trump referring to Omarosa as a dog.
So in the words of my late friend Aretha Franklin, show some RESPICT.
There we go, the great role model, civil rights leader, and bullhorn aficionado, the Reverend Sharpton, RESPICT. Not the first time this has happened, my friends. Al Sharpton asking for some walking around money from the Grooveyard of Forgotten. Okay, let's get started on the phones. We go to Powell, Ohio. Chris, it's up to you to kick us off today, sir. Welcome, and how are you?
I'm doing great today, Rush. Listening to you. Mega dittos to you. I had this point which came up from that discovery of that Orr memo from last week. I mean, we know that millions of dollars was funneled from Hillary into GPS, and that some of that money was funneled back into Orr's wife and their family. When he wrote that note after the phone call where he said that GPS was worried that the firing of Comey meant that they might be exposed, obviously what that says is that Comey had been shielding that relationship, and they were worried that if he was gone and that went to general investigation in the FBI, that all of this stuff that we're now finding out would be uncovered. But by instantly passing that over to Mueller, by creating that just absolutely phony special counsel and turning all of that investigation over to them, I think the hope there was to try to cover up everything that there. And that's why it wasn't until a month later that Rosenstein got around to even writing a.
Okay, let me jump because we're all over the board, and I haven't brought this up yet, but let me deal with this way. The New York Times has a story today, and maybe it was over the weekend. I don't recall when, but they've got a story that basically tries to position Bruce Orr as a nobody, that he was just a low-level functionary that got caught up in all this. I mean, the New York Times really has abandoned journalism. It is stunning that literally the abandoned journalism. Bruce Orr was a deputy attorney general. His rank was almost to the top of the Department of Justice, and his wife Nellie was a direct liaison with Fusion GPS, and his wife Nellie may, in fact, have actually been a co-author of that famous Golden Showers dossier. But aside from that, Bruce Orr remained in contact with Christopher Steele, who wrote the dossier, long after the FBI had cut him loose. The FBI fired Steele because he lied to them and continued to leak to the media when the FBI had told him to stop. Bruce Orr kept talking to him and kept dropping in news media hands what Steele was feeding him. Bruce Orr is at the center of all of this, the aim of which is to get Trump. He's not ancillary. He's not secondary, as the New York Times is trying to make it look like he is.
You're listening to Rush Limbaugh,
the big voice on the right,
on the EIB network. You're listening to the best of Rush on the EIB network.
And as always, and once again, meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Rush Limbaugh here at the Excellence in Broadcasting Network, starting our 31st year, but once you get this high, who's counting? Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo at eibnet.us. One more thing, excuse me just a sec. One more thing on the Don McGahn thing. Everybody's wondering where this came from. McGahn spoke to the special counsel's office not recently. This happened some time ago. And that is important because Mueller, there isn't any obstruction. I cannot believe I'm even talking about this as though it's a real thing. I guess I have to. But I've run out of ways to express my incredulity at this. I've never seen anything like this. Something so phony, so fraudulent, so literally unreal as this. And the reason I focus on this is because we are and have been regularly told what a man of honor Robert Mueller is. Throughout his storied Washington career, whenever he's been named the director of the FBI, whenever he was, wherever he's been, whatever job that he's had, that has been the reputation that he's enjoyed. Impeccable character, deep honor, more integrity in his little finger than anybody in Washington legal circles. It can't be the case. It simply can't be true. Because if it were, Mueller would have refused this investigation. He would have refused it on the basis that it didn't even qualify under Justice Department guidelines. There has to be a crime. Special counsel DOJ guidelines require a crime to be specified and pursued. And there wasn't one. There isn't one. There never has been one. And a guy who had more integrity in his little finger than anybody else had would have refused the appointment on the basis there's nothing here. And he certainly wouldn't continue it all this time after learning that there's nothing there. Instead, what this guy that has more integrity in his little finger is doing is trying to manufacture evidence of crime or whatever so that he can write a blistering report. And that's another thing. Everybody is expecting a blistering report. And the blistering report is what ostensibly will sanction Democrat action to impeach Trump after they win the House. And apparently everybody involved here, it's a fait accompli. There's going to be a blistering report. Okay, a blistering report, meaning Trump is going to really, really be blistered. For what? They don't have any evidence. There isn't any of collusion, and there isn't any obstruction. And if there were, it would have leaked long ago. Believe me, these clowns didn't want this investigation to last this long themselves, other than the people making big money off of it. But they wanted to be done with Trump. They wanted to have him done and gone a year ago. So the blistering report will talk about how Trump was irresponsible, should probably not have been elected, did not sufficiently understand the ways of the world and the ways of Washington, has put the nation unnecessarily at risk, has provided unusual access to foreign actors to our election. You know, a bunch of tripe. It's going to be a bunch of tripe. And the thing that galls me about this, everybody involved in it knows it. Everybody. Every investigator on Mueller's team, Mueller himself, Rosenstein, the Republicans, the Democrats, everybody knows that this is a total fraud. And the damage that these people are doing to our electoral system, this is unconscionable to me, and it is far more than Vladimir Putin could dream of, riding without a shirt on a horse all the way through to Ukraine and conquering it. There is no way that Putin would ever think he could do the kind of damage that official Washington is doing to our electoral system. Every election from this point forward is going to be questioned. Every election, the Russians are going to have had, especially Democrat, losses. But even elections that Democrats win, they're going to say they had to overcome a bunch of Russian meddling. They figured out how to do it, and they're going to praise themselves for beating back Russian oligarchs and all that. The Russians are now a permanent fixture in our election system when they didn't do anything because it was impossible for them to do anything. It boggles my mind. As I say, I have run out of ways to express my incredulity at this. But anyway, Rudy's reaction to this was to say that Mueller is panicking. Where did this come from? Where did this story come from? Because McGahn spoke to Mueller many moons ago. So where did it come from? I have no doubt it came from the special counsel's office. The New York Times they probably have a bureau there. The New York Times bureau at the special counsel's office. I wouldn't put it. Maggie Haberman probably has a satellite office right next to Mueller's desk. May even have a tap on his freaking phone for all I know. With permission. And so now they write that McGahn stalked to 30 hours. They don't want you to know that was authorized. They want you to think McGahn's flipping. And as I say, it's all about Trump trying, wanting to fire Mueller. But the problem is Trump hasn't fired Mueller. And he hasn't fired the inestimable Rod Rosenstein. So Rudy thinks that this means Mueller is panicking. The Mueller team is panicking because they've got nothing, and so they're leaking all this stuff to make it look like they've got something. It doesn't matter that they don't have any. There's nothing to have. In addition, this man with more integrity's little finger has looked right at the FISA court violations. He has looked right at all of the law breaking of the Clinton Foundation, Hillary Clinton, the involvement of the Clintons in the dossier, and he's ignored it. Because all of this is a cover-up for everything everybody did on the Hillary side. Because remember, the purpose of all of this at the beginning was to exonerate Hillary, to clear her for a presidential run. She was going to be the next president, and they were going to be in her administration. Their lives were set. Life was going to be wonderful and rosy and great. The problem was the nominee is a criminal. So they had to exonerate her. And that's what they've done. And in the process, they're trying to go out and get Trump for something that didn't happen. Look, this is it. I'm backing off now. I know that you're probably saying, Rush, we get it. Calm down. It's one of these things where I know you get it, but I still don't think I've convinced anybody yet, or not enough people. How many of you have gone out and tried to buy health insurance lately? Have you been surprised by any of it? Well, I'm asking you out there because there is stunning news. Beta 9 just dropped if you want to go. You got it. Okay. There's a story here, Investors Business Daily. Well, Investors, it used to be Investors Business Daily, but they have modernized. Media ignore record low Obamacare health insurance increases. Anybody want to guess why? I wonder if any of you who have tried to buy health insurance lately have been shocked at how, it's not inexpensive, but how small the increases from previous years are. Democrats promised to make Trump's efforts to sabotage Obamacare a big election issue this year. Where is it? Has anybody seen the Democrats making a big deal out of Trump trying to sabotage Obamacare? Have you seen that? You haven't, have you? There isn't any, I haven't seen any Democrats caterwauling about Trump destroying Obamacare. Have you? They were going to make it a big deal. Why haven't they? Well, because there isn't any big deal. Rate increases for Obamacare premiums started coming in well below expectations. I mean, well below expectations. And people say, why isn't that news? Because it doesn't help the Democrats. That's why it's not news. A few months ago, the Washington Post reported that the Democrats were centering their campaign to retake Congress on a staunch defense of Obamacare. Chuck U. Schumer declared that we Democrats are going to be relentless in making sure the American people exactly understand who is to blame for sky-high rate increases. And then dutifully, news outlets ran story after doomsday story about how efforts to undermine Obamacare by Republicans and Trump would cause a huge spike in premiums, just like, did you remember after Trump was elected what Paul Krugman said? That we were going to be in a permanent economic decline, not a permanent economic recession. Why does the guy even have a job? He hasn't been close to right since Trump was elected, or 2 years before it. So another big Democrat issue has just bitten the dust. Now let me tell you why they were going to make a big issue out of it. Obamacare premiums in 2014 increased 25%. In 2015, Obamacare premiums, if you went to the Obamacare website, like the law used to mandate that you do, if you went there, in 2015, the increase was 14% from the year before. In 2016 election year, the rate increase was 8%. In 2017, Obamacare rate increases were 23%. Remember, Trump hadn't done anything to Obamacare yet, tried but hadn't done anything. In 2018, we had to buy them. The 2018 health insurance premiums were purchased in late 2017, okay? So 37% increase over 2017, which was a 23% increase over 2016. The increase, if you go buy health insurance now, if you've been buying it now or for the rest of the year, the 2019 health insurance rate increase will be 1% or less. It's what's called bending the cost curve down. It's what happens when adults are put in charge of things. This is what happens when a central key element of Obamacare was repealed. Making you buy it. There's no reason to cut costs if you have to buy it. Why would anybody cut costs? With the mandate gone, there's competition. It's stunning. Health insurance increase. They're sky high, don't misunderstand. But the rate increase next year is only going to be 1%. Because of action the Trump administration has taken on Obamacare. And look at this. Via the website Deadline Hollywood, midterm elections blue wave looking doubtful, says CBS News head pollster. Midterm elections blue wave looking doubtful. Well, we'll have details of that. And yes, the MSNBC audio coming right after this.
This is the big one. Rush on the EIB network.
Okay, let me set the table here. This is Friday night, MSNBC. The name of the program, Meet the Press Daily. And they're talking about Trump's criticism of Mueller. Katie Tur TUR is the fill-in host. We have Michelle Goldberg as a columnist for the New York Times. Real Clear Politics national political reporter Caitlin Huey Burns, and Commentary magazine editor John J. Podhoretz. And it begins with Caitlin Huey Burns from national political reporter of the Real Clear Politics website.
This is the most vocal president, at least in real time, that we've had in recent memory, right? He is the leader of the free world.
Oh, no, he's not. He's not the leader of the free world, but sorry.
Well, by default, he's the leader of the free world.
Angela Merkel's the leader of the free world, but...
Well, he is the most
All right,
important
now stop
person.
this, and Mike, stop this and put it back to this. I need to tell you, the second voice you hear is Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times, the woman who says, oh, no, he's not. He's not the leader of free world. Angela Merkel is. That's Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times. So Trump's not the leader of free world. He can't be because Trump doesn't believe in freedom, see? This is where this is headed. Are we ready for this from the top yet again? Okay, here we go in 3, 2, 1.
This is the most vocal president, at least in real time, that we've had in recent memory, right? He is the leader of the free world.
Oh, no, he's not. He's not the leader of the free world, but sorry.
Well, by default, he's the leader of the free world.
Angela Merkel's the leader of the free world, but...
Well, he is the most important person in the world in politics right now, and he is very vocal. And I do agree with you that this does express a level of exasperation among his aides that they can't have any control over.
Your argument that he's not the leader of the free world because he's not standing up for democracy, he's not standing up for humanitarian rights.
He's a sort of junior player in a block of authoritarian countries.
There you have some Michelle Goldberg. This is soundbite number 1, and the next one's coming. Michelle Goldberg says, right, he's not the leader of free world because he's sort of a junior player in a block of authoritarian countries. So what is she thinking of? What's an authoritarian country in her world? Venezuela is not. Because it's so, what is an authoritarian country in her mind? Anyway, Trump can't qualify as a leader of the free world because he's an authoritarian. He's not, doesn't believe it. These people are, they're just genuinely insane. So it picks up again here with Katie Tur then saying, so you're saying, and it's Michelle Goldberg that will reply here, you're saying that people like the European Union are no longer looking at Trump as a leader, and they're thinking of doing their own thing?
Right. They see he's like, right, he's part of a bloc that includes Vladimir Putin, Duterte. He's part of kind of an axis power.
Well, hold on. Well, he's not rounding people up and murdering them without any, due process.
He'd certainly like to.
Well, anyway.
I don't think you can say that definitively, Michelle.
I do think that if he's not the leader of the free world, there is no leader of the free world. There is no world order without the most important, richest, and most powerful country in the world trying to maintain some semblance.
It's the sort of country where, say, like Saudi Arabia can intimidate Canada for sending out a tweet about its human rights record.
All right. I'm sorry. I can't keep up. This is what the poison of hatred does to people. It makes them incoherent. It embarrasses them, except they don't know it. And it was Katie Tur who said, well, wait, he's not like rounding people up and murdering them. And Podhoretz weakly said, yeah. And Tur said, yeah, without any, due process. And Goldberg says, well, he'd certainly like to. So an opinion writer for the New York Times plainly says on TV that the president of the United States would like to round people up and murder them like Putin does and like Duterte. For those of you in Rio Linda, this is his madman over in the Philippines. I honestly, folks, you don't know what to do with this. Other than you try to laugh at it. You wonder, you've got a so-called conservative on this panel who does not react or object in much of any way to any of this other than to defend the fact that any president is the leader of the free world. So I had to lift the ban. We have a ban on MSNBC because we contributed to their ratings. And I said, I can't have that. And we kept playing sound bites of some of their Looney Tune hosts years ago. I said, I cannot be responsible for that network's rating increase. So we yanked them, banned them, and so forth. Occasionally we lift it. Let's take a brief time out. We'll do that, come back, and resume with you on the phones.
You're listening to the best of Rush Limbaugh.
Okay. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. Rush Limbaugh doing what I was born to do. Yes, sir. Back to the phones we go. Mary Ann Davidson, North Carolina. Hi. Great to have you here.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm happy to talk to you. I'm sorry. I was waiting a while, so I'm very nervous. How are you doing?
I'm fine, but you don't need to be nervous. You're going to enjoy this. You're going to want to do it again and again and again and again.
Okay. What I was calling in to say, and it's, the more I listen to you, the more frustrated I get, because you are literally one of the only voices that I hear that is, you're just on target, you're on point, and you say everything so incredibly well. And then I listen to the Sunday news shows, and you get somebody like Giuliani out there just stepping in it and giving them, a soundbite with his "truth is not truth" comment.
Wait a minute. Now, I appreciate that you are aware of how well I cut to the chase. I mean, I get in, get it, and get out. I mean, I make the complex understandable, and I really appreciate you observing that. But what did Rudy do that you think stepped in it?
I mean, I just think he made some comment that, and I understood what he was saying, and he explained what he was saying is "truth is not truth," or something to that effect. I forget the exact line. But he was basically trying to point out that the supposed truth that we hear from one side is really not the truth.
Well, let me cut to the chase on this, because you are, again, very shrewd here to have picked up on this. Rudy made this comment, "truth is not truth," when he was being interviewed by F. Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. So essentially, Rudy Giuliani was in the middle of a trap. Anytime somebody from a Trump organization goes on NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, it's a trap. And they'd better know it. It is a trap. They don't care. Like, F. Chuck Todd is not interested in Rudy's side of things. He's not interested in Rudy. He might be interested in Rudy making news, but he's not interested in Rudy making sense. So it is a trap. It's one of the oldest traps in the book. F. Chuck Todd is saying, what is Trump worried about talking to Mueller? All you got to do is tell the truth. And if you tell the truth, nothing can happen to you. It's a trap. It is this trap is, it's as old as Delilah saying to Samson, "Let me give you a haircut." It's a trap. And Rudy understands that you just can't go tell the truth to the special counsel and have it proclaimed as the truth. So he says truth is not truth. So the media thinks they've got a scoop. Rudy Giuliani says the truth isn't the truth. And so they're trying to make this whole big deal that Rudy Giuliani is dishonest and is openly dishonest and is advocating dishonesty, which is not at all what Rudy Giuliani was doing. Chuck Todd was trying to goad his viewers into believing that the only reason Trump doesn't talk to Mueller is because he's got something to hide. So F. Chuck Todd lays the trap and says, "Rudy, Mr. Mayor, if you just go in and tell the truth, you've got nothing to worry about." Tell that to Martha Stewart. A perjury trap is very simple. Trump could go in and tell the truth about something. And then Mueller could go get another witness and ask that witness about the same story, and that witness would tell a different story. Without even verifying which is accurate, Trump could be charged with lying in that scenario, folks. That is a patented Department of Justice perjury trap 101. It's why you don't talk to them. It's why you've got nothing to gain. Even by telling them the truth. They're not interested in the truth. They want to entrap Trump. They want to get Trump. They want to throw Trump out of office. They want to impeach Trump. They want to do something. And F. Chuck Todd is every bit as much a part of the effort as is Robert Mueller. And so is Wolf Blitzer. And so is Jake Tapper. And so is anybody else that hosts any of these Sunday shows or any other show during the week on cable or broadcast news. So Rudy was exactly right when he said truth isn't truth. If you doubt me, what is the ultimate truth? And who gets to decide what it is, folks? You know as well as I do that truth is a floating concept. Simply because of what we human beings are able to do with it. You may know the truth of a matter inside out, and you may tell people what the truth is. But you also ought to know that there might be people in your circumstance or situation who will lie and tell a different version of your truth and thereby try to create the impression that you, who possess the truth, are lying about it. Truth does not triumph. If it did, liberalism would have died before I was born. Truth does not triumph. If it did, communism wouldn't be alive. The very fact that lies triumph as truth is the existence of communism, the existence of socialism, and I would dare say the existence of the Democrat Party today. So Rudy only stepped in it by virtue of the words he used, but conceptually he could not have been more correct. And now I hear he's walking it back. He should not have walked it back. He should have just explained what he meant like I just did. Because where Robert Mueller is concerned, the truth isn't the truth. Because if it were, there wouldn't even be an investigation. If the truth were the truth, and if it mattered, there would be no need to talk to Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton would be in the chair. And Glenn Simpson would be in the chair, and Christopher Steele would be in the chair, and Stephen Halper would be in the chair, and Strzok and McCabe and Bruce Orr and Comey would be in the chair, and all of them would be under interrogation. If truth was what this was about. But it isn't. And it seldom is. If you ever end up in court, if you're ever a defendant in court, do not make the mistake of thinking truth is what matters there. Because it isn't. The courtroom is a stage. The courtroom is a show. And a lot of things besides the truth matter, like images, and like how to influence the jury, and how to tap into their emotional being and thoughts on the matter at hand as opposed to their actual intellectualizing or thinking about it. Oh, it would be fabulous if truth mattered, but because there are dishonest people, because there are snakes, because there are scorpions, because there are Stormy Daniels types out there everywhere, truth oftentimes doesn't matter at all. If truth mattered, John Gotti would have been convicted in the first trial. I mean, how many examples here do I give to make the point? But see, apparently they didn't make the case on John Gotti, or John Gotti was able to buy a juror. If John Gotti bought a juror, what does that do to truth? That juror swore up and down Gotti didn't do it. And on the Bible, I swear, Judge, Your Honor, everything I'm saying, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me, $. So Rudy didn't make a mistake in saying truth isn't truth, but it gave F. Chuck Todd and the rest of the drive-bys an opening and an opportunity to basically recast what Rudy was saying and lie about it. And say, Rudy Giuliani just admitted that the Trump team doesn't believe in truth, that the Trump team knows that truth won't carry the day for them, that they have to lie or what have you. Rudy was exactly right. He's talking as lawyers talk. There's truth, and then there's truth. How many of you've had the truth on your side, or whatever the issue is? I don't care. Something at work, something at home. You're a student. You didn't get your homework done for whatever. You've told the truth. How many people believe you? Your parents. When you tell them the dog ate it. Or even when you come up with the truth. And by the way, how often does truth exonerate you? Yeah, Dad, I didn't do my homework. Why not? Because you know what, Dad, I didn't give a rat's rear, and I wanted to go out and party with my buddies. Oh, well, son, that's such... You know what? We're going to give you a new car for being honest. How often does that happen? Anyway, I don't think there's anything to gain by going on TV with F. Chuck Todd and the rest of these clowns that are doing nothing but setting traps. But these guys all think they can overcome the trap. I understand the mindset. They think that they can beat back the F. Chuck Todds of the world and stymie them. And by the way, Rudy is doing a great job. You know what Rudy's job is? What's Rudy's? Listen, truth. What is Rudy's job? Right now. What is Rudy? Wait a minute now. Rudy is Trump's lawyer. And people are saying, that's strange. Rudy's not acting like a lawyer. Well, how do lawyers act? You ought to go to court when the personal injury bar gets in gear. How do lawyers act? Is it stately, button-down French cuffs, law books in the background, speaking of the brilliance of former Chief Justice's Constitution? How do lawyers behave? That's number one. Number two, Rudy has one job right now, and it's to drive Robert Mueller's opinion poll numbers down. Because this thing isn't about the law. This thing right now is pure politics. And Rudy is succeeding dramatically in making people suspicious of the honor and integrity and purpose of Robert Mueller in advance of the upcoming blistering report. Rudy's job is to have as many people as possible question the honesty and the integrity of the upcoming blistering report by questioning the honesty and integrity of Mueller and his investigation. Rudy is on a political attack mission, and he uses his resume to enhance the effort. He is a lawyer. He's the former mayor. Well, those things carry certain, weight with people. They just do. And Rudy's doing a good job. Rudy is in that regard. Anyway, I appreciate your comments, Marianne, very much. I got to take a brief time out here, folks, but there's always more here on the EIB network.
Listen always to what the left doesn't want you to hear. Rush on the EIB network.
You're listening to Rush Limbaugh. Coming up at noon, it's Michael Savage on Talk Radio 560 KSFO.
Let me give you another, somewhat, as I look back on it, cute example. When this program was new, and it was growing leaps and bounds, and it was captivating everybody's minds, it still does, but I mean, when it was new, there was all kinds of, we were adding stations every day. The growth of the program was, we were launching. I mean, it was like a rocket ship. And, of course, I immediately became a target and an enemy of the left of the Democrat Party. So, my mother called me one day and told me those people at the National Enquirer were so nice. I said, what? Yeah, they called here, and they wanted to come by and talk to me about you and your childhood and so forth. So I told them some stories about you and some of your friends at the training school and kindergarten. Mother, you didn't. Oh, yeah. They were so nice. Look, son, we Limbaughs have nothing to hide. I said, yes, we do. Some of this stuff is none of their business, and it's not yours to tell them this. You're wrong. We've got nothing to hide. You should be happy they want to know about you. Mom, that's not what they want. They're looking not for any truth about it. They're looking for all kinds of dirt. So I had to go through what did you tell them? And I'm sitting, I'm what am I going to do? It's my mother. I'm ready to blow my stack, but I can't blow my stack. But she believed that she was just so honored that people she didn't know wanted to know about her son, and she was so proud she couldn't wait to tell them. And things that she thought were cute little childhood stories, the Inquirer turns into I was a, racist in the making. Anyway, not to mention the time she invited a journalist on EIB1 and didn't tell me until I got to the plane to take. Oh, they were so nice. You really should talk to these people. Truth isn't truth, folks. It depends on who's hearing it and what they want to do with it. Anyway, Mark in Bel Air, Michigan, you're next. It's great to have you on the EIB. She even showed them my draft records. That's right, I forgot. She showed them my draft records to prove that there was a story that I dodged the draft. And she wanted to prove that. They walked out of the house with copies of the draft records. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. Mark, how are you doing?
Good, Rush. This is Mark from Bel Air, Michigan. How are you doing? Mega dittos, my friend, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
I know that I talked to many people during the day, and I voiced my opinion of many, many Americans. You are very important to this country as doing your vocation as our president is doing right now. So never doubt yourself, and on the days you may get discouraged, please continue to go forward. You're doing greater things than you can even measure.
Thank you, sir, very much. I really appreciate that.
The reason I'm calling is I had a thought I wanted to share with you, and I'd like to see if you can see it through this lens. A couple of times you've mentioned that Donald Trump may have mistakenly kept the wrong people in place, and they're not doing the things that we think they should be doing.
Well, I had some questions about the choices of staff early on.
Right. And that makes sense. But I've read his books, I've watched all of his Apprentice shows, and I've seen how he works. There's a very key ingredient he uses in all of his business decisions. He's applied very successfully to this. He is a master of understanding men's egos. Those men will eat each other up like sharks down there to get at him. And he knows that. And they're, like you said, you've mentioned this many times, Rush, and you hit the nail on the head. The swamp will never go down silently. They're going to fight tooth and nail. He knew this, and the things that are being exposed is because he's done exactly that. And I ask you to look at it through this lens because I really believe it looks a lot differently when you think of it that way.
Well, okay, let me ponder that. I've got to take a break. Your timing was impeccable. I mean, you could be a host. You got that set in the exact amount of time, and you didn't even know how little time you had.
And you thought it couldn't get any better. Rush on the EIB Network. You're listening to the best of Rush on the EIB Network.
And the drive-by media does not know what to think. The drive-by media is in a state of panic over what's just happened at the Manafort trial. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. It's great to have you once again here at the EIB Network at the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. Now, see, this is what happened. I have the whole show prepared, laid out, ready to go, and then this happens. I mean, this happened just 2-3 minutes ago. What happened is this. The jury sent a note to the judge, T.S. Ellis, asking what they should do if they cannot reach a consensus, a unanimous conclusion. The jury asked in a note, if we can't come to a consensus for a single count, how can we fill in the verdict sheet? Now, I'm not at all clear what this means. There are 18 counts. And do they mean they can't come to an agreement on any when they say a single count? Or are they in agreement on 17 but can't come to an agreement on the 18th? Now, the drive-by media, for some reason, is taking this as horrible news. Drive-by media is totally invested in Manafort, as I said, being lined up at dawn within minutes of the verdict and being shot by somebody wearing a Trump mask, wearing a Make America Great hat. That's what they want to have. And because this will validate whatever Mueller is doing, which, I'm sorry, I need another rant on Mueller today. I'm going to wait a while to do it, but I got a text message from a friend of mine late yesterday afternoon. Do people not realize what's going on? And he had a great point that I've made once before, and I need to reiterate it, which we will do in due course. So the judge told the jury, well, you can do a partial verdict, but I don't want to go there yet. So he sent him back. He sent him back to the jury room and told him to keep deliberating until they can reach consensus. The jury said they needed a new verdict sheet, and they asked what not coming to a conclusion would mean for the final verdict. What would not coming to a conclusion mean for the final verdict? Well, what does it mean when you don't have a decision on a charge? Well, mistrial, hung jury, or what have you. But remember, there are 18 counts, and as I read everything about, everybody's assuming they've agreed on 17, and there's just one that they haven't agreed on. Now, if that's how everybody's interpreting it, and then the drive-bys are gloomy. I mean, CNN is gloomy about this. CNN, I think they were expecting this jury to, be gone less time than the OJ jury was. You remember how long the OJ jury was out? Just a little history here. I mean, the OJ trial, how many years did that go on? Seemed like, well, no, the actual trial. I mean, the case was, no, the trial was months. Remember all of that detailed DNA evidence that Barry Scheck presented? With all of that stuff, the jury has gone less than 3 hours, and they actually had their decision in 5 minutes. They just waited 2.5 hours to make it look like they had deliberated. And that contains some really technical stuff in it. I think the drive-bys expected Manafort to be slam dunk guilty inside of the first day, and then had the execution that night, within everybody gathering at the Old Ebbitt Grill for a party, which is right next to the White House. But that hasn't happened, so they're a little gloomy out there. But we'll just have to wait and see what it all means, because it really is unclear. Ladies and gentlemen, every day I've come to realize here that every day doing this program, we, just by virtue of collecting things that are happening to talk to you about, by doing show prep, that it is actually becoming very easy and becoming a very regular thing to chronicle the descent into real insanity, real madness. I'm not using figures of speech. Real insanity, literal madness on the part of people on the left. And I have 3 examples today. One of them I mentioned yesterday at the end of the program. Grab audio soundbite number 16. I did have a chance to get to this yesterday because I only... yeah, there's one more thing. Folks, I went home yesterday. I was beating myself up all last night. I was just livid. And I've told me I've got to change the way I do this. Yesterday I had on the soundbite roster, I had that audio of Phil Mudd going bonkers on CNN, which Trump has been tweeting about. Phil Mudd is on with Paris Denard, who's an African-American conservative, and just loses it. I mean, just literally loses his composure. He's a CIA guy. He's one of these swamp intelligence rats that makes up the deep state that just despises Trump. And he's lost his marbles. They all are losing their marbles, and they're doing it in public. In one sense, it's very helpful to Trump, if you ask me. He goes out and describes these people as Looney Tunes, and then they go on TV and act it out. So in that sense, it's helpful. But this guy is supposedly one of our most respected intelligence analysts. He's one of the men that we've been relying on for years. He's one of the men that we trust. The guy's losing his marbles on TV, talking to an African-American who's a Trump supporter. He can't believe it. He can't process it. He actually told Paris Denard to get the hell off the set. Well, anyway, I had it yesterday, and I forgot that it was there. I said, there's got to be a better way. Like, right now, well, I don't want to burden you with this. It's not your problem. But I just forgot that it was there. It's like having to remember I've got 75 things here. And I forgot it. I was all prepared. If I could have been a near exclusive, yet then I go home and I see Trump tweeting about it, and I was just mad at myself like you can't believe. So that's one of the things we're going to get to earlier. I intended to get to that first, but then this stuff came up. The Manafort trial and my desire to document the fact that right before our very eyes, the left, which everybody thinks is going to sweep back into power in a massive blue wave landslide, is literally losing its mind. They are literally going insane. 3 examples. Here's the first. I mentioned yesterday afternoon, Stevie Wonder on CBS this morning.
I just feel that all these various diseases that we have and all these things that are happening in the world, in part, it's because there are those who don't believe in global warming, don't believe that what we do affects the world, what we eat affects the world, affects us. And I just hope that people will grow up and grow out of the foolishness and know that we all, by how we think, how we do, how we treat others, we will never unlock the key until we truly let go of the hatred, the bigotry, the evilness, the selfishness. When we do that, then we can unlock some of those things that keep us in this place.
Well, I'm sorry, the bite doesn't contain what I thought it contained. So it may be one of those days. The story is that Stevie Wonder blames global warming for Aretha Franklin's cancer. He was spreading the conspiracy theory that global warming is linked to cancer. And he was talking, he said all the things that you heard him say here. And he thinks that the lack of belief in it, that people not believing in climate change and not believing in global warming is causing way too many people to eat the wrong things and not conserve in the right way and creating a bunch of carcinogens out there that happen to catch up with Aretha. And if you and me had only believed in climate change and had been living our lives as though the way we live affects climate change and therefore changed the way we lived, if we had all voted Democrat and if we had all believed in big government and sent as much money as we could to government, then Aretha would never have gotten cancer. And he means it. He means it. Now this, folks, how else will you categorize this? This is dumb. It's stupid. The thing is, he believes it. That's what makes this stuff dangerous. He really believes this stuff. Here's the next example. Oprah Winfrey promotes Shout Your Abortion movement, where women brag about their abortions. She's promoting this. Oprah Winfrey waded deeper into political waters this summer by promoting the Shout Your Abortion movement and its efforts to normalize abortion, which is what? See, I'm going to tell you what abortion is, and I'm going to be the one controversial. Oprah can run around and tell women to run around and start shouting and bragging about them, and she's normal. If I describe what abortion actually is, I am the problem. The July issue of the O magazine, that's the Oprah's magazine, featured Shout Your Abortion founder Amelia Bono in its inspiration section. Amelia Bono, who began the campaign to urge women to brag about aborting their unborn babies, soon will be coming out with a new book by the same title. She told Oprah's magazine how it all began. This great, great story all began in 2015 When I found out that the House of Representatives had voted to defund Planned Parenthood, I kind of unraveled. I opened Facebook, and without thinking, like a year ago, I had an abortion at Planned Parenthood, and I remember this experience with a nearly inexpressible level of gratitude. I hit post 153 words later, and my life changed. Everything changed. So Amelia Bono said that the campaign really took off when a friend shared her post on Twitter with the hashtag #ShoutYourAbortion. She blamed the pro-life movement for trying to silence women who have had abortion. You notice we're trying to silence Brennan by taking away his security clearance when nobody's doing anything of the sort. We're not trying to silence anybody. That's not what we do. They always accuse us of doing what they're actually doing. So there's the Oprah, who signed on now with the Shout Your Abortion movement, promoting it, urging it, bragging about it. But now, my friends in the pièce de résistance, Exhibit 3 of the left's descent into utter insanity and madness. Our subject, the LGBTQIA, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and I'm lost at QIA. It doesn't matter. They know what it means, and that's enough. We're here today to discuss the LGBTQIA Safe Sex Guide. And at the root of the need for the LGBTQIA Safe Sex Guide is an anger. The people at the LGBTQIA are livid that a bunch of old white guys named human body parts. They don't like the fact that they have to call their vagina a vagina. It doesn't fulfill their destiny. It limits their capabilities. They need a new term for vagina to encompass all that they do in the land of LGBTQIA. And so, I'm not making this up, going forward, the vagina will now be called the front hole. And the anus will be called the back hole. The mouth will be called the upper hole. In LGBTQIA safe sex literature. So this means, my friends, that, for example, those pussy hats, pussy hats, those will now be called front hole hats, right? Is that? I just want to make sure I'm learning. See, I don't want to offend the LGBTQIA members. So from now on, the pussy hats will be front hole hats. Now, Lewinsky's. We all know what a Lewinsky is. People think a Lewinsky is a sex act. But we're now going to need to label, we're going to, like the mouth is the upper front hole to describe in detail. This is why they want to do this. But I'm not kidding. They really resent the fact that a bunch of old people, scientists, primarily white people, named human body parts and organs and functions and did not get anywhere near inclusive enough. Can we dumb down the population any more than this? The penis, ladies and gentlemen, shall be called the front stick.
The center of the radio universe. Rush on the EIB network.
Yes, sir, Bob. Welcome back, my friends. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh. By the way, a companion story that I meant to mention along with the LGBTQIA. Let me just read you, by the way, a paragraph under the explanation of why they're doing this. Traditional safe sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes everyone's gender is the same as the sex they were assigned at birth. Well, of course. By the way, do you think you were assigned your sex? Is that how you look at it? Certainly, were you assigned a male? And where did the assignation happen? When you were in the womb, do you recall going before a review board in heaven or wherever, and somebody in a flowing white robe and a big white beard assigned you to be male, and that you didn't want to be male, but you had no choice at that point? So if you survived your birth, which is a questionable thing in the American left, and if you survived your birth, now you can challenge your assignation. Is that how you look at it? Did anybody that you grew up with in your demographic group or age group look at their sexuality that way, that somebody somewhere had assigned them their sex? And, okay, me either. I have never looked at my gender as an assignation, but these people clearly believe it. Traditional safe sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes. See, right there you have prejudice. Somebody presumes that everyone's gender, and here are the possibilities they mention: male, female, non-binary, trans. Okay, male, female, what do you think non-binary is? So I don't know what binary would mean. You go both ways. You got both. Non-binary means you got nothing? That somebody forgot to assign you? That can't be what? Or else trans. Anyway, traditional safe sex guides are often structured in a way that presumes everybody's gender is the same as the sex they were assigned at birth, which is male, female, intersex, or differences in sexual development. So it's because some people were misassigned. A bunch of people were assigned a sexuality they wanted no part of, but of course in the womb they had no voice because the world was discriminating against them even then, you see.